Yeah, I thought, Bo was pretty clear about thinking that we're going to have one in the future, and Bob was more ambivalent about it the way I read his comments, and I haven't had a chance other than just to greet the coaches earlier and tell them good luck, to ask them more of what they're thinking. I mean, in the past in our conference, our coaches have been, if not unanimous, nearly unanimous against having a championship game, and it would be interesting if they shifted that view all of a sudden, because that's something we haven't heard since I've been here. In the 8 years I've been here, and even prior to that they've had that interest. I've said before that there's a high degree of interest of having the opportunity to play everybody, and in fact, somewhat of an excitement about the fact that everybody else has copied what the Big 12 and the SEC did 15 and more years ago, and now we're going back to having a conference the way they were set up originally, and that we're somewhat innovative in that regard. So I don't see or feel a great amount of momentum to go that direction, and we'll have to see as we go on and have a few years of playing around robin and putting some significant games on this date, how we'll feel about it.
Along those lines, I mean, it's almost everybody's expecting at least 1 or 2, maybe 3 games on this date next year. Where is that in the process of where you might move a game or 2?
We're still analyzing that, talking to our television partners, and I fully expect that we'll have a game or 2. I'm not sure if we'll have many more than that. I mean, there'll have to be games that our members know that are going to be televised, I think. So we don't want to place games on this date unless we think they're going to be televised. And so we'll be talking a lot with our television partners. And I think we've seen in the past with other conferences that sometimes those end of the year games can be of even more significance than the championship game in some other conference.
And dead set on rotating it, or maybe always have high rating type teams like a Bedlam or Oklahoma or Texas, or a high profile game on this weekend?
We'll have to analyze all that. It'll probably be ones that we anticipate are going to be meaningful for the conference race at that point in time. But that's always hard to fully guess.
Is there a short list of what games would be on that slate?
Not necessarily. I mean, some of the big rivalry games are being looked at right now, but I'd hate to get out there and then without having full involvement of our membership. So we've got some. David, we've had discussions about it. So, but those are internal right now, and I'm not prepared to really venture out and say which ones we're really zeroing in on.
Dan, I've been told that you have a goal starting next year of every conference game being televised. How close and how feasible is that?
Not starting next year necessarily, Barry, but when we have our new contract, and that'll be something that we will demand in negotiations that's accomplished. And what I've said before is what we really like the SEC model, where every game is telecast in some form or fashion, or broadcast in some form or fashion, even if it's an ESPN3 situation. Now there's such a merger between what's done on television, traditional airwaves, and what's done in the internet, that you can get a lot done that way too. But also, and then have the ability for an institution to exploit one game a year, like the SEC is able to do.
It seems like we took a stride this year. We had an Oklahoma State Tech game, pretty high interest. Was not selected for television. A couple days after the deadline on Tuesday or Wednesday, everyone rethought it, got it on television. How much wiggle room do you have in certain circumstances like that?
Well, now under our current agreements, we're pushing more and more games into the television area, even though they weren't originally contemplated to be on television. It's interesting, in the numbers of years, you go all the way back to prior to the lawsuit with Oklahoma and Georgia versus the NCAA, and the feeling was you didn't want to have any games on television hardly, because it would hurt the crowds and hurt the ratings of those games that are on. And then you had an era when television like ESPN or so forth wouldn't want to put games against each other, wouldn't want to put a game on ESPN and on ABC because they feared the ratings would go down. Well, now it's, all of those theories have gone down. Attendance has gone way up with a lot more television, and games running against each other, even in the same conference, doesn't seem to hurt the viewership. In fact, provides a platform for the television entities to be able to sell advertising to others across a number of platforms. So I think, you know, we've hit a place now where we're going to need exposure of all of our games in some form or fashion, and we're going to demand it in our next contract.
Dan, I know you've heard this criticism, but I'd like you to address it publicly if possible. A lot of Husker fans feel like Nebraska has been unfairly targeted by the officials this season in light of the 16 penalties against A&M. They feel the Huskers have been unfairly targeted because they're leaving the Big 12 for the Big 10. What would you say to those fans who believe that?
Well, I'd say it's unfortunate. That's not anything that's ever been a part of what we do, and I also said publicly, and I think it was published, that it's a silly notion to think that there's some conspiracy going on with involving officiating, because if that's the case, it could be it could be very easily done where they lose a lot more games, anybody in any sport. So you know, we are very committed to having a program with integrity. We have an individual who operates at Walt Anderson who is as well thought of as anybody in the officiating profession. He analyzes each and every game. We have professional former NFL officials or even current NFL officials who also analyze our games, each and every play, every week. And we make mistakes in the officiating program, and those things just, we've made mistakes with all teams in all categories, but nothing in our program is intentional in terms of favoring any teams.
If I could follow that up, a lot was made this past week that you didn't come to Lincoln to present the Huskers with the Big 12 North Trophy after they defeated Colorado. Could you tell us why not?
Well, there were, you know, I think this has been well documented as well, but, and I don't want to get too far into it, but first of all, we don't and haven't always presented divisional trophies. In fact, we weren't able to present any divisional trophies this year based upon having tiebreaker systems and not fully anticipating or being able to anticipate who might win it. I was able to present the trophy to Nebraska last year, but I didn't present it to Texas. So this uproar about not being there to present the trophy is somewhat interesting. And then also what, you know, and I just want to speak to this briefly, but it's been well documented about the numbers of calls and messages we've received, and a handful of those being threatening ones that we had to take time to fully sort out. And so I thought that it would not only be a situation to be perhaps difficult for any of our staff or me to go, but also be one that could be unsafe. That was the advice that I had received, and also one that frankly might take away from the accomplishments of the team. With all of the issues going on and the concerns that fan and a lot of the media had been writing about, I thought it might not be as well received by the team as what it might be otherwise. But getting back to the first statement of, you know, this notion that we're out there delivering divisional trophies to every team that gets them, we were in a situation where we didn't deliver any to any of the 5 institutions. Well, I mean, they got them, but we didn't present them.